welcome to today's class on Dotloop 201. So in today's class, we'll be covering a little more of the advanced concepts of Dotloop. It'll be a little quicker paced class as opposed to the Dotloop 101 class, which again can be viewed on slmtraining.com if you'd like to go back and watch that. So I'm hoping today to teach you a few tips, tricks, and time savers to make your Dotloop experience a little more efficient, a little more effective as you work with your loops. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is, of course, go ahead and log into your Dotloop account. Now, you can log into your Dotloop account from MyKW directly, right, by clicking Start My Transactions, which I'm sure you're all pretty comfortable with getting into Dotloop by now. And of course, you can go to dotloop.com directly to log in as well. And that's a great thing to know if you guys have a tablet or an Android or iPhone. There is a Dotloop app that I would highly suggest downloading so you can work with your clients on the go, okay, right from the Dotloop app. So that is a pretty cool thing to check out if you have not already. And as you're logging into your Dotloop account, just a real quick overview on what Dotloop is in general is Dotloop is going to be your online filing cabinet. So you're going to store all of the forms that you have for every transaction right in your Dotloop account. All right, and the biggest thing to know when you're creating these loops, okay, and when I say a loop, what I mean is an online file. So biggest thing to know is you're going to have a loop per property that you sell. So for example, if you are representing a client who is selling their home with you and then buying the next home, that's going to be two separate loops because it's two different properties or two different transactions. Okay, so it's not per the client necessarily, it's per the property. So that's how Dotloop works the best. And as you're logging into your Dotloop home screen, all right, since this is a little more of the advanced class, I do want to show you a new, Dotloop is beta testing a new Dotloop homepage, which I would like to show you. So you can kind of start to get your feet wet until they officially change over to this Dotloop homepage that they're rolling out here. So depending on what homepage view you have currently, if you're looking at something similar to my screen here, you should see on the top black toolbar here, it says click here for early access to the new and improved loops page. So just so we can take a look and know what we're getting into when it does officially roll over, let's go ahead and click here. So on that top black toolbar, go ahead and click here. It should be under the KW logo. So we can check out this new Dotloop homepage view. And I'll take you right on over to the new Dotloop homepage view. Now this is still in the beta testing phase, so you'll notice right here they give you a little message letting you know they'd love your feedback and email us here if you have any input on this beta test. And of course on the right hand side you'll see it says want out, and you can easily go back. Okay, so we will be going back for most of class today. I do just want to show you this because I know once you learn a system, it's a little frustrating when they start to update things and change what you're used to. You're finally getting comfortable and they changed the view. So I do want to comfort you in one way that the navigation is exactly the same. Dotloop is really just changing the look of it. So what I mean is you'll notice on the top right here, you have the same icons that you do on your normal Dotloop view. Okay, so the navigation on the top right is the exact same. You'll notice you can actually search through the loops here, which is a great feature, especially as you start to sell more homes and have more transactions. Great to be able to search through your loops quickly. All right, right here, obviously it's really great to know where the Add Loop button is, so that'll be on the top right for this new Dotloop homepage view. And if you want to watch on my screen real quick, something that is even more comforting about this new Dotloop homepage view is they are purely changing the homepage. So you'll notice if you just watch on my screen, as soon as I click on anything from this page, so let's say if I click on a loop from here, it will take me to the old view, right? This is what you're used to seeing, and it's right back to normal. So purely all they are changing is that Dotloop homepage view. So if you did click on anything, you can always click back to my loops to get back to that Dotloop homepage view. But that is a little more comforting knowing it all looks the same once you click into a loop or click on any of these icons. It is just simply the homepage view that will be changing. And again, it's a beta testing phase, so it's not official quite yet. I did just want to show you guys that. I did create a short video on this homepage view walking you through all of this. If you're interested in getting that, feel free to email support@scottleroymarketing.com. You can put attention my name, which is Leah, Leah, and I'd be happy to shoot that video over to you so you can get a little more in-depth info on this new Dotloop homepage view. But for time's sake and for the rest of this class, if you are looking at this view here, if you'll just simply click Go Back on the top right. Okay, so we are clicking Go Back on the top right, so where it says Want Out, and just go ahead and click on the blue link that says Go Back, so we can go back to our normal Dotloop homepage view here. Okay, this is still the official one until they officially roll out the other one. So please let me know if I lost anyone in switching these two Dotloop homepage views, okay, because I will be teaching class from the normal Dotloop homepage view that you're used to. Now, as we're going over this Dotloop homepage view, I do just want to point out a couple things in how to organize your Dotloop homepage and what to do if you ever lose a loop. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes here focusing on organization and finding lost loops. So if you are looking at this view here, okay, this is the grid view, how you see a bunch of loops here. All right, this page view is fine. However, you will notice on the top right, there's a little icon that is a red dot on the top right. And that red dot only displays if you have already created a loop in your account. So if you're not seeing this red dot right here under the black toolbar, there's nothing wrong with your account. You just haven't created a loop yet, so hold tight, no worries. But if you could go ahead and click that red dot that says Switch to List View, it'll pull you over to a list view of your loops. And that's that red dot on the very top right of your Dotloop homepage under the black toolbar here. So organizationally, you don't typically need to be seeing your loops that have sold, or let's say you have test loops in here or transactions that fell through that you want to archive. Okay, you don't want to see those on a regular basis because as you start to get more loops, it's hard to find the loops that you are most pertinent, are active loops. So let's talk about how to organize your loops real quick. So from this Dotloop homepage view, you'll notice that under each loop, it does give you a status. So it gives you a little drop down right here. So if you don't have one selected, it might say select transaction type, for example here. So we'll go down to this one. So if you could go ahead and click on that little drop down that says select transaction type here, you'll see it gives you some options to select whether it's a purchase or listing for sale and so forth. All right, let's go ahead and select that. If you don't have any loops created, just hold tight, just watch this. It'll be helpful for the future. So I'm going to click listing for sale, for example, in the first drop down. Now, once I select the first drop down here, it will then give me the option to select a loop status. Okay, so you have to select the first drop down to be able to select a status in a second drop down here. And this is where the organization comes into play. So first of all, I'd like you to note the different options you have here. So such as active listing or pre-listing. Okay, that might apply as you create new loops. All right, and as you get done with loops and it sells, the property closes, you can change it to sold. Or any test loops or transactions that didn't go through. There's no deleting anything in the system, you guys, so you can only archive things. So that's a good thing if you ever, quote unquote, lose a loop. It is in the system because you can't delete it. There's no way to do it, but you can archive it here. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to archived. Let's say I don't need this loop anymore. Okay, so from there, so once I change it to archived, for example, or sold, it won't just automatically disappear from my Dotloop homepage. What I need to do is scroll to the top of my page here and select filter on this top white toolbar. Right on the right side of your screen there, you'll notice it says filter in red. And when I select filter, you'll notice a loop statuses column on the center of this dropdown. Okay, so these statuses here correlate with the status that we just selected on that loop. So I can go through and I can check all the statuses I'd like to see. So specifically, I would recommend leaving unchecked the sold and uncheck the archived. So you can check all the other ones here. You can check up to 9. Okay, so we want to leave unchecked the archived and the sold. So we're selecting what we do want to see, we're checking. What we don't want to see are our sold and archived loops. We don't need to see those on a daily basis. So now to make this take effect here, all I would need to do is click this big red filter button on the right hand side. And it will make any archive loops disappear from your screen. Okay, so that's a great way to stay organized, changing the status of your loop to sold or archived, and then making sure you filter that right up here on the top right. Really highly recommend it to being able to find your loops quickly. Now, a big question that we get all the time is we have frantic agents calling in, oh no, I lost my loop. You can imagine how alarming that would be. It happens all the time. All right, and again, as I mentioned, you cannot delete a loop. You can't delete anything in Dotloop for that matter. So the great news, it's in there. So how you go about finding any lost loops is the same process really that we just went through. So if you come up to this filter button on the top right, on that white toolbar, go ahead and click filter again. And all you'll need to do is click clear all on the right hand side. That will clear out any filters, any statuses that are blocking that from displaying. And once you click this red filter button again, it will make all your loops display right away, even your ones marked archive. So you can search through those right away with this search bar here or scroll through and find that. All right, so I do recommend making a note of that to save your hair from getting pulled out the next time that a loop, quote unquote, disappears. It really does help out. And so hopefully we'll feel comfortable with that if you ever run into that into the future. So but now let's go ahead and get the ball rolling on creating a practice loop for today's class. So if you are on this Dotloop homepage view, let's go ahead and click Create a Loop. Okay, so on the right side of this red search bar here, I'm going to click Create Loop. And you can go ahead and name it 123 Main Street, 123 Practice Loop, whatever you would like. It's really great to have a practice loop in your account anyway, because before going on to an appointment in front of clients, it's really great to practice Dotloop features in a test loop or practice loop so you look like you know what you're doing when you get to your appointment. Always helpful. All right. So something I do want to mention as you're starting to type in your property address here, and just heads up, you will want to name your loop the property address if at all possible. And you will notice as you start to type in the property address, different examples or suggestions will pop up. Now, let me see if I can do 1, 2, 3, make more of them pop up. Okay, so you'll notice as they pop up, I just want to explain what these do because it can be really helpful in making your Dotloop experience more efficient here. So, for example, as you see, you'll see if it's listed by an agent. So I can see that this right here, this loop, the source is Dotloop, the MLS number, and it's listed by this agent. The reason that this would be great to select, all right, if I'm a buyer's agent coming to make an offer on this listing right here, and I know it's the correct listing because I can see the MLS number and the listing agent here, if I were to select this option here, it would link my loop with that listing agent. Now, it only links the two loops in ways that it keeps everything still private, right? That listing agent can't see anything in your loop. But what it does help with is two things. First of all, it will auto-populate any property address information that the listing agent put in the back end of their loop into your loop. So it'll auto-populate the property address onto any forms you bring into Dotloop, for example. All right, so that's one really great usage of it. The second thing, if you have used Dotloop for a while here and you've gotten offers into Dotloop on a listing that you've had, you might have noticed that you get two loops for the same property, which is very aggravating to have two loops for the same property. But if another agent makes an offer on your listing, you might get a second loop with that agent's offer. Selecting from this drop down here that this is the listing you're making an offer on will again link your loops and avoid that two loop situation. When that agent makes an offer on your listing, it would just actually put another folder in your loop with that offer that was submitted on your listing. All right, so I know that's a little more advanced. If that hurt your brain, no worries. I totally understand, and I did make a whole nother video on this tip exactly for that reason. So again, if you would like me to send you that tip video, feel free to email us at support@scottlorremarketing.com. Put attention my name and just ask me for that video. I'll shoot that over. Happy to help out with that. All right, but that is a really great tip if you can start to use that. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and make my practice loop here. So the property address, and you might have the option to select a template under there as well. Very handy, as it'll pull in any initial forms that you need when starting your loop. Your office staff sets up these templates under here, so if you don't have any templates, no worries, there's nothing wrong with your account. It's just specific to your market center. To keep us all consistent, I'm not going to select the template, and I'm just going to click Create Loop on the bottom right here. And of course, guys, feel free to ask me any questions as you have them as I'm going through all this. I know these are a little more advanced tips, so I'm happy to help you understand them. And as we get into our loop here, as you already know, there are three main sections to your loop that I just want to quickly go over. The first main section of your loop is this document section on the top of your screen. And that is the main section that you'll be working on. That's where you'll be spending most of your time preparing documents and sending them off to your clients to be electronically signed. And you will notice right here, there is a note that anything you add to this loop is private until shared. That's the biggest concept of Dotloop. No one can see what's in your loop until you share it with them. So that's great. As we scroll down, we see this people section is the second big section in your loop. This people section will show you any clients or mortgage providers. Any people involved in this transaction will be viewed in this people section here. You will always see yourself and also the admin for your market center in this loop, all right, in every loop that you create for that matter. A quick tip, make sure you write down what your Dotloop email address is. Really, really important to know what your Dotloop email address is. If you are telling an agent who is making an offer on your property, they would need to share it to this Dotloop email address that you're seeing on the bottom of your screen here specifically. And that gets mixed up all the time. So make sure to take a note what your Dotloop email address is. And lastly, on the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a task section here, which is pretty cool, especially if you like to create to-do lists for yourself. So for example, all the different things you need to do to get a listing live on the MLS. All right, you can create to-do list templates down here. And so every time you have a new listing, you can add that to-do list to be reminded of all the things you need to do, like get it professionally measured, put the photos on the MLS, put a lockbox outside, all the 900 things you need to do for your listing, you can create a to-do list for and check that off. All right, so you can create templates right here to do that. For now though, let's go ahead and scroll up to the top of your screen, back to our document section. Oh, sorry, I lied. If you could actually scroll back down, we're gonna start in the people section. Sorry about that, just taking you on a little tour here. So again, we're on the bottom here in the people section, and the first thing we're going to do is add a person to our loop. So generally that is the first step when you get into your loop, is we are going to click add person in this people section here. Okay, so let's go ahead and click this big red button here that says add person. From here, you will need three main items to add a person. That would be their full name, email address, and role. So if you'd like to go ahead and put in, your spouse's or kid's name, or John Smith if you're not feeling very creative today, or maybe your favorite actor, okay, a fun client to have today. Okay, I'm going to use Tony Stark for any Iron Man fans. And you'll need to put in an email address as well. Now, I would recommend, especially for this practice loop here, putting in a personal email address that you have. Again, that's an email address that is not associated to the Dotloop system, right? We just found our Dotloop email. So if you put in a personal email address that you have here, it's often great to see what your clients see when you share forms to this address, so you can help walk your clients through that should they have any questions. And lastly, let's go ahead and select a role. So let's go ahead and click on role in red on the right-hand side here. And you'll see all the different roles that you have the option of selecting. There is a little gray scroll bar on the far right that's often missed there. I'm going to work through a listing loop today. If you'd like to follow along with that, I'm going to go ahead and select seller from the roles here. So we have the three main things we need. We have full name, email address, and our role here. So let's talk about this little tempting checkbox that says add to my team. All right, if you are taking notes on today's class, I will point out noteworthy items, and this is one of them. Please write to never ever click this add to my team button if you are adding a client to the loop. Okay, again, we never want to click this checkbox if you are adding a client to the loop. So what this does, if you were to click this checkbox here, it would allow this person that we're adding to see everything and do everything in the loop that you can do. And we of course don't want that, right? We just want our clients to see the items that we choose to share with them. Because as I mentioned, that's the general concept of Dotloop, is everything is private until shared. Okay, so again, we never want to click this checkbox for our client. But it is a really cool feature, so let's talk about when we would want to use that. So this add to my team feature is a great tool to use if you are collaborating on a loop. So if you are co-listing a property with another agent in your office. So again, you are on the same side of the transaction. You're both working on the same listing together. If you were to add that other agent and click add to my team here, it would add this loop to that agent's Dotloop account as well, so you could both collaborate on the loop together. That agent would be able to see everything and do everything in this loop that you can do. All right, so really great, again, if you are co-listing, so that's if you're on the same side of the transaction. Another great feature, or time to use that rather, is if you are on a team, on a real estate team, and you have an admin on your team that helps out with your loops. If you add your admin in here and click add to my team, it would add this loop into your admin Dotloop account as well, so your admin can help you out. So great times to use that, but adding a client is not one of them. All right, so let me know if you have questions on that, but hopefully that's clear for everyone. It can't be undone, so make sure you're sure before clicking this checkbox here. And let's go ahead and click add person on the very bottom right, that big red button there. Okay, so I now see that we have our client added in and the client's email address. If you ever needed to make any changes to this client right here, like let's say you accidentally entered in their email address incorrectly, these three drop-down dots on the far right of the client's name does give you the option to edit, remove, and so forth. Okay, you can add to my team straight from here as well. Okay, just a heads up while we're here. Introduce, so if you add, let's say, 3 people to your loop, they can't see each other either. So if you wanted any, let's say your mortgage provider to interact with your client, you could add your mortgage provider and you could click to introduce them here so they can talk back and forth in the loop and collaborate together as well. So just a heads up on what that does. If your client had a spouse or there was a second party in the transaction, you could of course click add person to add that second person in right away. The last thing we're going to do in this bottom section here is in line with your name. Okay, so you'll see it says you here. Let's go ahead and change none. On the far right of your name, it should say none with a drop down arrow. And let's go ahead and change that to listing agent. Excuse me. All right, so we now have our role as the listing agent and we have the client's role as seller. Roles are super important if you want your client to be able to electronically sign. You cannot electronically sign without a role, so I can't stress how important that is. So now that we have our people added to our loop, let's go ahead and scroll up to the top of our loop to get into the fun stuff, adding documents to our loop. So now we're scrolling to the top of our loop. And from the top of our loop, let's quickly talk about organization when adding forms to your loop. As you know, there are tons of forms that go into a single transaction, and putting all of your forms under one folder is overwhelming. Okay, it's hard to find the form that you need very quickly, and not to mention when you submit these loops for review to your office staff is trying to keep you in compliance and make sure you have all of your forms to be in compliance. So it's really helpful for you and your office staff if you create folders within your loop to separate those forms up a little bit. So let's talk about the best folders that I've seen, but of course you can use folders however you would like to. So let's take a look at that a little bit. So on the top, you should already have a folder added in off default. And to the far right of the folder, you should see 3 drop-down dots. Okay, anywhere you see these 3 drop-down dots in Dotloop, it means more options. So go ahead and click on those 3 drop-down dots on the far right of the folder name. And let's select, sorry, I did that fast. Let's select rename from that drop-down. So again, I'm selecting the 3 drop-down dots to the far right of the folder name, and I'm selecting rename from that drop-down. And you'll notice that a cursor starts blinking to the left of the word folder, where I can start typing in the word listing, for example. So I'm making this listing folder. Now to make that name stick, I can either click enter on my keyboard or I can click in the white margin to the left of that folder name. You'll see it turns it red, indicating that it has now stuck. Now, if you accidentally clicked enter or clicked somewhere and this has a funky name now, no worries, guys. You can rename it as many times as you want through the same process we just did. 3 drop-down dots on the far right and rename. So we now have our listing folder. All right, the listing folder is great to put things that go into the listing, like your listing agreement, you're working with real estate agents, maybe the property disclosures signed by the seller, maybe your measurements, and so forth. So let's go ahead and click Add Folder to add a new one in here. So on the top right here, we're selecting Add Folder in red. This new folder will display, and it says New Folder. Now I can simply, there's a variety of ways to do this, of course, but I'm going to double click on the word New. So if you double click on the word New, it'll highlight the whole thing. So I can change this to Sales Folder. And again, you can either click Enter on your keyboard or you can click in the margin on the left-hand side to make that stick. And items that might go into your sales folder might be the fully executed contract, fully executed property disclosures. Okay, everything that went into the offer, the execution of the offer, would go into your sales folder here. And now let's add everyone's favorite folder on the top right. So we're clicking Add Folder on the top right to add our closing folder. Yay. All right, so this new folder will display one more time here. And you can again double click on the word New to highlight the whole thing, or you can use the arrows on your keyboard if that's easier for you to scroll over and backspace to type in the word Closing Folder. And again, you would just click Enter on your keyboard or click in the white margin to make that stick. And of course, items that go in the closing folder would include things like your closing disclosure, maybe a termite letter, anything that goes into the closing. I know that now you are probably a pro at adding folders, but it's really great to have an example of what you would want your loop to look like in this test loop. So now you can reference back and see what folders are mostly used. So this is the method I mostly see used and the one I've felt works best for me. You can of course use folders to whatever capacity you would like to. So if an offer falls through, for example, you could always create a new folder for the new offer to purchase and continue with your loop. Okay, just another example. So now that we are pros at adding folders, let's work on being pros at adding documents to these folders. So let's go ahead and click Add Document to the right of the listing folder. So you'll see it says in red, to the far right of listing folder, you should see add document here. And it will give you 3 blue boxes that appear. Okay, there are 3 ways to add in forms to your loop, and we're going to go over each one of those today in today's class. So first of all, this templates option here, and again, if you're not seeing these 3 boxes here, guys, make sure we are clicking add document to the far right of the folder name, and that will make those appear right away. And let's go ahead and select the first blue box that says templates. So you'll notice under that it says add an interactive form by selecting one from templates. So anytime you see the word interactive forms, that means you can just start typing in your form right away, which is great. Makes your life way easier. Now on the far right, as you click that first blue box, you'll notice a bunch of form folders on the left-hand side in red. Your Market Center staff adds these in for you, so yours will look different than mine, and that's totally normal. So what you'll want to do is scroll down on the far left column. Okay, there is a little scroll bar here to help with that. And I'm going to find a listing agreement, so if you'd like to follow along with me, feel free to go ahead and click on the folder on the far left side in red that you think would have your listing agreement in it. So once I select the form folder on the left-hand side that I would like to browse through, you should then see all the forms that are held in that folder on the next column over. Now, of course, there's this little scroll bar that you can scroll through to view all of those. Or you can use the search bar at the top, which I would recommend. The search bar here to search for whatever form you're looking for. So for example, if I type in the word listing, it'll pull up all the forms that have the word listing in that title. Now a lot of your form names might run off the page. If you hover your mouse over that form name, it will give you a little speech bubble telling you the full form name to make sure you're getting the right one. And as I find the form that I would like to start working with, I can click the checkbox to the far left of that form name, and I can click copy on the bottom right, that big red button there. It will then give me this lovely green checkbox letting me know one of one was imported, and I can click OK on the bottom right. And there you go. It was that easy to pull in an interactive form. Okay, so I'm just going to show you in the Dotloop 101 class, I do go very in depth on how to prepare these forms for interactive forms. So feel free to check out the Dotloop 101 video for in-depth information on that. In today's class, I'm going to show you some extra tips I don't go over in the Dotloop 101 class on these interactive forms, and then we'll dive into the other ways to add documents to your loop. So for now, if you could go ahead and select the form name that you just brought into your loop. So it's that simple to open a form in Dotloop, is you just go ahead and click on the form name, and it will open it right away so you can start working with it. Now the autofill box that displays is your best friend. It makes your life so much easier, so never click this X on the top right. We like this autofill box. So first of all, at the top here where it says roles, you should see already seller 1 has your client name, and the listing agent has your name, right? Because we told the Dotloop system here, we gave ourselves a role and we gave our seller a role when we were adding them to the system. So that's why they're already here. If you do not see your client in line with seller 1 here, so like if it only says select person, please make sure to go ahead and click select person and add that person from that dropdown. If you don't see your client from the dropdown, maybe you haven't added them to the loop yet, no worries. You could in theory click add person right here to add in that second spouse, for example. I can't stress how important this section is right here. If you do not see your client's name in line with their role, they will not be able to electronically sign. So super important to make sure we have our client in line here with seller 1 or seller 2. As we scroll down, you'll notice it prompts you for some information, and what it's trying to do is autofill the form for you. So especially if you're a new agent, looking at these forms, it can be pretty overwhelming. So it's great to go ahead and enter in the property information here, and then Dotloop knows where on the form to put that information. And not to mention on all future forms that you bring into this loop, it'll autofill that information for you again. So even if you are an experienced agent, adding the information in here is very helpful for time's sake goes. So if you want to go ahead and put in just to see what it looks like when a form autofills, I'm going to go ahead and just add in some property information here so you can see what that looks like. So feel free to add any information here. You can also search by the address or MLS number, and Dotloop will search on Google actually for this property information to autofill that for you. So that's a good time-saving tip as well. So I would recommend playing around with that in the future. But as you scroll down, you should see other information that you can autofill as well. But for time's sake, let's go ahead and scroll to the very bottom of this autofill box and simply click on that big red autofill button on the bottom right here. Okay, so again, if you missed any of that, just scroll to the very bottom of that autofill box, and I clicked autofill on the very bottom right. You'll see a big red button. Now you'll notice some of my fields have turned yellow, and the system is telling me 2 roles have been assigned and 13 fields have been autofilled. Okay, so any fields that you see are yellow, that means that information was autofilled in. If you ever need to go back and adjust any of that autofill information, of course you can click and just change that right from here, but you can also bring back that autofill box just by clicking that big red, on the black toolbar on the top right, you'll see it says autofill, and that'll pull up that autofill box again right away. So that it'll pop right back up. So no worries, you can always bring that back up just by clicking that on the top black toolbar there. Alright, so again, in the Dotloop 101 class, I do go over preparing these forms in depth. Some things I'd like to show you to add on to that is mainly in this More option on the top right. So if you can go ahead and just hover your mouse over More on the top right. I do want to point out Host in Person Signing, which is a really cool tool to use. So let me talk to you about that a little bit. So Host in Person Signing, what that does, all right, so typically when you're using Dotloop, you prepare these forms and you email it to your client so they can click to electronically sign and it comes back to you. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you were on a listing appointment, let's say, and you were typing up this listing agreement sitting next to your client, and now, okay, they're good, they would like to just electronically sign sitting next to you. That is exactly what this Host in Person Signing does. So if you were to come up to More, and again, you would need to type up the entire form first. Okay, so just a heads up on this, make sure you prepare all forms first before having your client sign it. If you try to make any changes to a form that is already signed by your client, it will erase all of their signatures because it thinks your client didn't sign for that change. So it makes sense. I have just a heads up because that's the worst when it erases your signatures. So again, you'll prepare the entire form. You'll come up to More, click Host in Person Signing. And don't do this with me, guys, because it will log you out of your Dotloop account, but let me explain this a little bit. The biggest thing you'll need to know is as I click Host in Person Signing, it'll ask me which client I would like to sign. So if I'm working with multiple clients, I would select which client, and I would click Continue. When I do so, I would then pass the device, and Dotloop tells you, please pass the device over to your client, and the client can sign right next to you. Now the biggest thing to know, once your client signs right next to you and hands the device back to you, just a heads up, Dotloop has signed you out of your Dotloop account and signed your client into their new free Dotloop account that allowed them to electronically sign. So when they pass the device back to you, you will need to log back into your Dotloop account to continue working in your loop. Right, Joe, just so you guys know, look like you know what you're doing when you practice this, or when you do this in front of your clients, just so you know, you will be logged out of your Dotloop account, so you'll need to log back in. And this is why I say having a practice loop in your account is really great to practice things like this so that when you go on your appointment, you're aware of the process. Okay, so really helpful, but a great tool. And again, that was up here on More and Host in-Person Signing. So hopefully that was clear to everyone. Please, of course, let me know if you have any questions on that, and I'm happy to help answer those. All right, so that is the biggest thing I wanted to show you on this interactive form right here. And again, when I say interactive form, that means you can click to start typing. One more quick note, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, if there is a third party in this transaction, so a lot of the forms only have 2 places to initial, let's say. If there was a third party in this transaction, you absolutely can come up to Add on the top black toolbar and add initials. It will then start following your mouse, that initial box. So you can then line the initial box wherever you'd like it and click to drop that. Okay, so you can add a third initial box if you need to, and extra signature boxes to these interactive forms as well. Just a quick note, and this will help you as we take a look at PDFs. You do need to assign the field to your client. So again, these fields are not signable unless they are assigned to someone. So there is an extra step on this. So if you do go to Add and we're adding initials to add that extra initial box, you will need to go to Assign Field on the once you click on that initial box to then select your client's name from this drop-down. Okay, so if you're adding a third person, you could go ahead and do that here. Or if you see that client's name from this list, you can go ahead and select their name and you'll see their initials pop in, indicating to you that you set it up correctly. Okay, so if you see their initials in print on the bottom, that means you set it up correctly and they can electronically sign. If you see that just says seller, this box is not signable. Okay, so just a heads up, we do need to make sure we see our client's initials in print. And just so no one's alarmed, if I were to print out this form, these boxes would be blank. Okay, those are not showing as signed. It just indicates to you that they can sign it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and click this back button on the top left of your form if you've been following along with me. So it's kind of hard to see, it's a back arrow on the top left black toolbar. The system will ask you if you want to save it. You can say yes. And it might also ask you if you want to share the form. You can say no right now. We don't need to share the form. All right, so that is some extra tips on how to add interactive forms and how some extra tips on what to do with them. So now let's go ahead and click Add Document to the far right of our sales folder. So we're going to want to be back in our main loop here, in our practice loop. And we're going to want to click on Add Document to the far right of the sales folder. Okay, so we've so far gone over this templates option here, this first blue box. Now let's talk about the second blue box, where it says Browse. So you'll see it says Search and add any PDF from your computer into this folder. So before I teach you how to do this, let me explain when you would do this. So let's say you're not very comfortable with technology or your client is not comfortable with electronic signatures. You'll run into that. You can use Dotloop to simply type up the document, okay, so it makes it look more professional. And then you can always click the 3 drop-down dots on the far right of any form to print that out. So I now have a printed out document and I go on my appointment, I explain the listing agreement or the offer to my client, and they hand sign it in front of me. Okay, so I now again have physical paperwork in my hands and I need to get that into my Dotloop account. What you would need to do is you would scan those documents into your computer. So step 1, we scanned it to our computer and saved it to our computer. So now what we'll need to do is we'll need to click Browse, this option here. So the second blue box, we need to go ahead and click Browse. So if you have a PDF on your computer that you want to go ahead and practice with, feel free. Other than that, you can just watch on my screen and that's totally fine. So I am browsing my computer for where I have that offer or that form saved, which I can then double click on that PDF to pull it right into my loop. So again, all you have to do is click this browse option, find it on your computer, double click the PDF, and it'll pull it into your Dotloop account right away. For anyone who feels a little more confident with technology and you like to drag and drop, you can absolutely drag any documents from any folders right into this area here, and that adds it to your account as well. Just an extra tip there. Okay, so now we have this PDF in our loop here. Now, what a PDF means is a non-editable form. Okay, in the first document we were working in, it was interactive. I could type in it. PDFs are not interactive. That means they can't be changed right from the form. However, let's go ahead and if you did bring one into your loop, feel free to go ahead and click on that form name so I can show you a few cool things about this. Now again, as I mentioned, this form is not editable. You'll notice I can't just click to start typing on any of these fields. However, the cool thing about Dotloop is Dotloop does allow you to edit PDFs, which is a really cool feature. Typically you have to pay a lot for in different programs. So let me show you how you would do this and when you would want to do this. So an example of when you'd want to edit this PDF. Let's say you have a fully executed document here. This is a fully executed offer to purchase. However, your clients, they verbally accepted that they are changing, let's say, the earnest money amount or the purchase price, or even their name is spelled incorrectly. As I mentioned earlier, making any changes to an interactive document in Dotloop erases all their signatures. And we do not want that for an offer to purchase. All right, so what you could do is you could save it to your computer as a PDF and re-add it so that all the signatures are preserved. And now I can make any changes to this document as I'd like. So to come up, let's say that I spelled the name incorrectly for my sellers. What I can do is I can come up to this add field on this top black toolbar here, and you'll see a whole bunch of different items that I can add. So in this case, I could go ahead and add a strike through, for example. You'll notice that once I click add strike through here, it'll start following my mouse. Unless you're on a touchscreen computer, just a heads up, it doesn't follow your mouse. But I can then click to drop that strike through anywhere I'd like it. From there, I can come back up to this add option on the top black toolbar, and I can add text. Okay, so you'll see all the different things that you can add in here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click add text. I can then line my mouse up where I'd like to drop that. So I can then type in the correct spelling of my client's names. Now you'll notice it's not a very big field here. So if you are adding text boxes, you'll notice a little right triangle on the bottom right of that text box that you can put your mouse over and click to expand that. Now just to fully execute this example here, of course, your clients would have to sign for any changes made to that executed document. So I would need to come up to add on the top black toolbar and add initials. And again, if you are comfortable with technology and comfortable with Dotloop in general, just another added tip here, if you were adding multiple fields to your page here, if you hold Shift before adding the text box, so I'm holding Shift and then I click to drop it, it will then allow me to add a second one without having to go back up to add. Okay, so that's just an extra tip, a little more advanced one on that. So clicking Shift before clicking will allow you to keep adding initial boxes. So I can now add both my initial boxes here, and hopefully, as you've learned in that last interactive form, my clients will not be able to electronically sign if I just send it off like this. I will need to go to a sign field here to click on my client's name from this list. I now see my client's initials in that initial box, so that lets me know that my client can sign. All right, so that is how you work with PDFs. right? You can add as many fields as you would like, and it preserves the signatures. Okay? It's a really great tool if your clients go to Florida in the middle of a transaction, for example, for vacation. You can also add any initial boxes for them to sign any paperwork that you receive. And just a heads up, Dotloop only accepts PDF, so you cannot add like a picture of a check, for example. And you might get that. You'll get a picture of an earnest money check that you need to add to your loop. You would need to convert that to a PDF. So if you ever run into that, if you Google JPEG to PDF converter, there's a bunch of free converters out there. A JPEG is a picture file. If that hurts your brain and you're trying to do that, feel free to email us at support@scottleroymarketing.com. We are happy to convert that picture to a PDF for you to help you out. Okay, but again, Dotloop only accepts PDFs, no picture files or any other types of file. Let me know if you have questions on that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click this back button on the top left if you were following along with me. I'm going to click yes to save changes and no to sharing the form if it prompts you for that. And I am going to go over the last but not least way to add a form to your loop here. And this is a pretty cool way to do it. This is actually my favorite way to do it. It's the most efficient way to do it. So if you go ahead and click on Add Document on the far right here, you'll see those 3 blue boxes display. And I'm going to actually select the email option on the far right there. So far we've gone over these first 2. This email option, you'll notice it says attach the files you need to an email and send them directly into this folder. Okay, let me talk quickly about when I would use this. Let's say an agent on the other side, so let's say the buyer's agent sent you a document, and that buyer's agent works at Allen Tate, so they are not cool enough to use Dotloop, so they just send it a PDF into an email. So now you have an email with that PDF of the document, and all you want to do is forward that email to get the document right into your loop here. Let's take a look at that. And I would probably recommend just watching on my screen for this one. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I of course clicked Add Document on the top right there. I'm going to select this email option. Now when I select email, that 3rd blue box there, it generates this super crazy long email address here that is specific to this folder in this loop. Okay, so that's why it's so long here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Copy to Clipboard. All right, so now I have this crazy long email address copied. And now I'm going to switch tabs over into my email account. So I notice right here, here is the document that Allen Tate agent emailed me. It's a PDF of the offer, and I need to get that into my loop as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to forward this email. Now, if you are using your KW Gmail account, right, how you forward emails is by going to the top right of that email, that down arrow there, and you'll click forward. If you use another email system, that's totally fine. Right, you'll just make sure to forward that email, the email with the attachment. Okay, so I see that I have this this attachment here. And in the To field here, I'm going to right click and select Paste. And that will paste in that crazy long email address here that is specific again to that folder in that loop. All right, now as I click Send here, so I'm making sure I have that PDF attachment. As I click Send, all right, you will notice that Dotloop ignores any verbiage in the actual email, so Dotloop will only pick up on any attachments. So I'm going to go back over to my loop here. So I just switched tabs, not to confuse anyone. And your form just won't magically appear here. You will need to refresh your page. If you're not familiar with how to refresh your page, that is just that arrow in a circle. Typically on the top left of your browser, it depends what browser you're using, but it's the arrow in a circle, kind of typically by the back button on the top left of your browser. I'm using Chrome. If you're using Chrome, it should be in the same spot. So once I refresh my page here, I'll now notice I have that emailed offer to purchase in my loop. And that is the most efficient way to get any forms that you have in your email account straight over into your loop, into the folder that you would like it in. I know that was a couple steps here. I really do know that. And again, where we started was going to add document and email here. And because I know it's a couple steps there, I did again create a specialized 10-minute video on just how to email into Dotloop. So if you would like to see that tip video, again, feel free to email support@scottleroymarketing.com. Put attention my name, which is again Leah, Leah, and I'd be more than happy to send you that tip video on how to email into Dotloop. So just let me know. Okay, and the last thing I am going to show you in today's class is we're going to talk a little bit about sharing our forms in Dotloop. So a big question that we get, or a big problem that you may run into, is I shared the form to my client, but they did not receive it. So let's talk about what you would do if your client says they're not receiving the forms that you're sharing with them. And this is good to take notes on if you ever run into that. So first of all, from your loop here, hopefully everyone is on our loop, you can click the checkbox to the left of whichever forms you would like to share. So this is how you would share multiple forms at once, is simply click the checkboxes to the left of that form name. And as soon as I click the checkboxes to the left of any form name, it'll give you bulk options on the top right. Okay, so you do need to check these checkboxes to see these options appear. Now, you'll see a whole bunch of different options like archiving, for example. Again, there's no way to delete anything in the system, but you can archive any forms that you are no longer working with. Another cool one I'd like to point out, of course, printing, we got that. Downloading, if you guys get a fully executed offer to purchase, I cannot recommend any more highly to download that form to your computer. It is really nice to have that as a backup, a fully executed contract, because again, signatures can get deleted if any changes are made to the form. So great to have a backup of that fully executed offer. But what I'd really like to focus on here is sharing. So if you'd like to, go ahead and make sure we have a couple boxes checked, and let's click share on the top right. That big red button here. Okay, so we're assuming, and let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and click share. You don't have to follow along with me. I'm going to share because the example I am walking you through here is what if you share it and your client says they did not receive it. Now, again, in the Dotloop 101 video, I go in depth into sharing and the different ways you can share forms. So feel free to check it out. It's at the end of the Dotloop 101 class on that. But let's take a look at resharing documents. So again, feel free to watch on my screen, but the first thing you would want to do if your client says, hey, I did not receive that document, you can come back in and click share, and you'll see right here, I see under who has access, I see my client's name. So I know I went through and already shared this form to my client. You'll see on the far right of this who has access section here, it says reshare and more options. So that would be a great first step. Come to reshare, click your client's name, and click reshare, and Dotloop will send that off to them. So that is one thing to do. Another thing that you can do, so again, we did all that from the share button here. Another thing to do, guys, make sure you recheck your client's email address, that you spelled it correctly, that they told you the correct address. Honestly, that's one of the more common things that is happening, is the email address is incorrect. And of course, if it is incorrect, you can always come to these 3 drop-down dots on the far right to edit that. I'd encourage your client to check their spam folder as well to make sure it didn't go there. And the last thing I'm going to show you guys, and then I'll let you go enjoy your Thursday, is the last thing you would want to check is scrolling to the very top of your screen here. And this is something you can follow along with if you are doing this with me. You'll see it has an activity log at the top right of your loop, so right under the black toolbar here. You'll see an activity log here. And what this activity log does in general is it shows you basically every single click that was made in this loop, every time a form was signed, sent, so forth. Right, so great to check out, but what I want to show you for this example is it shows you that it was shared. So if the client's saying they did not receive it, check the status right here. So it shows me the status at the end here is sent. If that did not go through, it would tell you right here that the status bounced back, for example, or the email isn't working. So this is great to check, to see, just to double check that that form went through to your client. All right, I'll show you the status right here. So again, those are the 3 main things of what to do if your client is saying they did not receive the form you sent them. All right, guys, so that is the Dotloop 201 class. That was a little more advanced, fast-paced class, so I will be putting this class up recorded very shortly here, so you can always watch it again to pause it and follow along. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email us at support@scottleroymarketing.com. I'm happy to write out any instructions for you as well. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let us know. I hope you guys have a great Friday Eve and happy looping. Take care, guys.